Cathar Love 85. Escape from slavery. Was I a slave? I certainly was. Quite probably you are too. Although at the time I didn't realise it, and quite possibly you could be a slave and not realise it. To have a look at slavery. Oh, for instance, where did the word come from? The word slave came from Slav, because in Europe many of the invading armies, surrounding countries, loved to take slaves from the Slavic areas, the Slavic communities. Hence the name slave. And in most societies and most countries had slaves. It was a part of their system, economic system. The Romans, the last, I think, Saudi Arabia, even today, slavery was illegal until 1962. So that's legal in one of the richest countries in the world. Romans had their slaves, we all know that, and the Roman master could give slaves their freedom. And yet, even when they had their freedom, many slaves went back into voluntary servitude because they were fed, they were housed, and they looked after, and also, I'm sure, they had a good master. And slaves are also incorporated into the family to the extent that when one sees the graves in Rome, the slave, he might be a Greek slave or a slave from Africa, and but he'll take his master's surname, and showing that he believes that he is, although a slave, he is part of this Roman family. And yet, throughout history, there are people who vied, who aspired for freedom, real freedom, totally free. And there are many societies like that. I'm told that the American Red Indian, the warrior, and he lived for hunting and fighting and so forth. But there's one Red Indian who said, we'll never forget nor forgive the day that Western, the whites, introduced work into the Americas. So they had a large dose of personal freedom, even within the tribal constraints. In Europe, in Russia, there were people like the troubadours, the minstrels, the singers who used to go around, wanderers who simply wanted to be free. They didn't want to be working or having a master. And there was a few thousand of them. But Peter the Great of Russia, he put a stop to that. He said, he made it a law that in Russia, everybody must belong to somebody. Everybody must be obedient to somebody above him. So in Russia, and this is in the 17th, 18th centuries, there were actually 8 tiers of slavery. And the bottom tier was voluntary slavery. Now that may seem a little odd, but when you're poor and you're desperate and you've got nothing else, all you have is your body for sale. And they sold themselves voluntarily into slavery so they could have a house, a roof above their head, and be fed. Again, most slaves throughout the world are or were in domestic service. It was the slaves in America that had terrible conditions. But the slaves in America had it good compared to the slaves that worked for the Spanish, the conquistadores, because they worked their slaves to death. They wanted a slave to work in the mines for something like 6 years, and that was it. They got rid of him. Whereas in America, they had slaves and they bred slaves, and obviously they had to have reasonable conditions for that to happen. There was one Catholic priest, Casas. He was the first Catholic priest to be ordained in the New World, and he wrote to the Pope about how they were just turning people into slaves, working them to death in the mines and the plantations, but especially in the mines for gold and silver. And he just said, he wrote to the Pope and he said, there are thousands of orphans here because their parents are slaves in the mines. Could you do something about it? But the Pope didn't. He stuck with the businessmen, the corporations. Things haven't changed that much even today. The plain fact is, there are people of power who want power at any price. They want people, to them, to be a slave owner is, you're a powerful person, you have slaves under you. So we have these corporations, these huge corporations today, which are enacting the same thing. Now, we have people on a salary. Oh yes, I'm on a salary, and I'm on a very good salary. Yes, but your salary, you're not working 40 hours for that salary. You're working 80 hours for that salary. 40 hours are unpaid. You, my friend, are an economic slave. You are in servitude to your corporation. You have put your life in their hands. And not only that, in most cases, you are a voluntary slave. So you're at the lower rung of the ladder if you were in Russia. What is all this to do, I pray tell, with Catharism, which I usually chat about? Well, you see, one can also be a slave to one's belief, to one's religion, to one's culture, or all of them put together. Gnosticism, but especially Catharism, the whole point of it is to become a Cathar, you need to think for yourself. At some point you make a decision, but that decision is based on evidence, on study, on investigation, and with Catharism you are freed. You have no heaven or hell. There's a world of spirit which we go to in between lives. There's no devils or demons to plague you, scare you. They're not interested in the sacraments of baptism, even marriage. If you are married, marry. What Cathars are interested in is the degree of care and love that you offer or share with another human being. Your degree of goodness, your degree of kindness. It is the absolute opposite of power. With Catharism, not truth that sets you free. Truth will often, if you think that's the truth, that will often enslave you. That's because they've given you that belief. But Cathars, certainly in a spiritual sense, in a mystical sense, are free. We're free to go about our lives. You want to gamble? Gamble. You like sex? Have sex. You like a glass of wine? You like to drink? Drink. It's all there. It's all natural. Don't be obsessed by it. Don't use it to harm yourself or harm another. These are all things that are natural. The environment, look after nature, look after the animals. They are part of us. And the most important ingredient from a Cathar point of view is being able to laugh. And laugh at your own situation. You know, I mean, the things that I did, and I thought I was so smart. In actual fact, corporations, and I was just a slave for business. But at the time I thought I was pretty clever and so forth in that job, and in actual fact they were just flogging me to death. But I was a willing slave. And but we need the capacity. One of the things about true spirituality, or spiritual reality if you want to put it, is the fact that we can laugh. We can laugh at ourselves, we can laugh at other things, and even when things are terrible, and there's terrible things going on in the world today, but we understand that. We even try, we do something about it. But at the same time, we need to be able to have a laugh and see even in the most desperate things, there's often times that we can laugh and see a laugh and see the funny side of things. There's I'm going to finish, but there's a small, from the point of view of laughing, with the mystical side of things and spiritual side of things, one is all and all is one. Okay, the world is all organic. It's all part of this unity. All is one and one is all. So anyway, this Australian journalist, pardon me, I've forgotten his name, but he was talking to the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama's always got a laugh and a smile. So that shows that there's a certain spiritual, mystical elevation there. But anyway, he said to the Dalai Lama, I'm going to tell you a joke about you, about the Dalai Lama. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, big smile. And he said, you, the Dalai Lama, went into this pizza bar, pizza restaurant, pizza bar. And the Dalai Lama looked at him, and the Australian journalist said, you understand pizza? And he went, oh yes. He said, pizza you eat. Yes. And so the Dalai Lama, you went into the pizza bar and you said, make me one with everything. Amusing. But the thing is, even with our spirituality, even with our beliefs, it can't be that serious that we can't have a laugh. On that note, I shall say goodbye for now. Bye.